You ever notice how most people rush to react before they even think? It's like a reflex, a mental habit so deeply wired that it's almost invisible. But here's the brutal truth. That instinct to respond emotionally, impulsively, is quietly making you less smart. Not less knowledgeable, but less wise. Think about it. Every time you snap, lose your cool, or jump to conclusions, you're giving away your power. You're letting fleeting emotions take the wheel instead of clear thought. That's the trap most fall into. And it's why so many people never really grow past their struggles or see real change in their lives. Now imagine if you could break that cycle, if you could train your mind to pause, to step back, to watch those urges without acting on them. That one shift, just one mental habit, can put you leagues ahead of 90% of the crowd. It's not about being smarter in the traditional sense. It's about mastering yourself, your reactions, your emotional chaos. This is the core of Stoicism. It's ancient, but brutally relevant today. Stoics don't deny feelings. They don't pretend they don't exist. Instead, they recognize the power in choosing how to respond. It's about quiet control, not loud emotion. It's a radical freedom few ever tap into. Maybe you've been told to just stay calm before. But this goes way deeper. It's about rewiring your brain, rewiring your life. Let's talk about that. Most people walk through life convinced that intelligence is fixed, something you're either born with or not. But that's not true. The real difference between people who rise and those who stay stuck isn't raw intellect. It's a silent mental habit most don't even know they have. This habit determines how you process discomfort, respond to conflict, handle pressure, and deal with failure. It's not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It works quietly under the surface, shaping the way you think, speak, act, and feel. And depending on how you use it, it can either make you remarkably effective or quietly sabotage everything. Let's be real. How many times have you said something you regretted? Not because you didn't know better, but because you didn't pause? Or how often have you walked away from a conversation, an argument, a decision, thinking, I wish I'd handled that differently? It's not because you weren't smart enough. It's because you didn't slow down enough. The truth is, intelligence isn't only about what you know. It's about how you apply it under pressure. And that depends on one habit: the ability to pause between stimulus and response. It sounds too simple to be profound. But ask yourself this: how many people actually do it? How many people, when triggered, can stop, breathe, and choose a wiser path? How many people react without thinking, whether it's anger, sarcasm, defensiveness, or retreat, and only realize afterward that they let emotion steer the wheel? That's the difference. That's the edge. The people who seem unshakable, deeply wise, calm under fire, they don't have more answers than you. They just have a stronger pause, a wider space between what happens and what they do next. And that space is everything. It's the moment when a reactive mind would lash out, but a wiser mind asks, is this necessary? Is this true? Is this helpful? That's not passivity. That's power. We live in a world that glorifies fast responses, fast thinking, fast decisions, fast opinions. But speed isn't always strength. Sometimes real strength is restraint. It's resisting the urge to react just to protect your ego, to win an argument, or to feel in control. This is where Stoicism becomes incredibly relevant. Not as ancient philosophy, but as practical mental training. The Stoics believed that between what happens and how we respond lies our freedom. That's where human dignity is. You can't always control the outside world, what people say, what life throws at you, but you can always choose your next move. And that choice, that awareness, that's the habit we're talking about. Let's break it down. Every day something pushes your buttons. A message that annoys you. a look that makes you feel insecure, a task that overwhelms you. Your mind rushes to fill in the story. They're disrespecting me. I can't do this. This is unfair. Those thoughts aren't facts. They're reactions. And if you don't pause to question them, they shape your reality. So many people go through life emotionally hijacked by these invisible mental scripts. They don't see the space between trigger and reaction because they were never taught to look for it. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Your reaction isn't always reality. It's often a defense mechanism, a habit you built to survive something in the past, not to thrive in the present. The habit we're talking about, the pause, isn't suppression. It's not about pretending you don't feel. It's about reclaiming your power to respond from a place of clarity. Imagine this. You're in a heated conversation. Your heart's pounding. You feel the urge to cut someone off, defend yourself, or storm out. In that moment, if you've never trained the pause, your body takes over. The primitive brain floods your system with adrenaline and you're gone, reacting, not responding. But if you've practiced this habit, even just a little, you catch it. You notice the rising heat. You breathe. You say to yourself, this isn't about winning. It's about understanding. And suddenly you're in control. That 1 second of awareness can change the entire trajectory of your day or your life. Why does this matter so much? Because in a world of constant noise, endless stimuli, and emotional triggers, the smartest people aren't the loudest or the fastest. They're the ones who've trained their minds to slow down, reflect, and respond from a place of strength, not survival. This pause is not natural for most people. It's uncomfortable. It forces you to sit with your feelings, not discharge them. It makes you face yourself, your pride, your fears, your insecurities. That's why most avoid it. But if you're willing to build it, even slowly, you gain something extraordinary: mental freedom. You become the kind of person who doesn't need to prove anything in every argument, who can listen to someone insulting you and still respond with grace, who can face uncertainty without collapsing into fear, not because you're emotionless, but because you've learned to let emotions inform you without letting them control you. This is emotional intelligence at its rawest form. Not just being aware of your feelings, but choosing how to express them with intention. The habit starts small. It starts with awareness. When something frustrates you, pause. When someone criticizes you, pause. When life feels unfair, pause. Ask yourself, what's really happening here? What am I believing in this moment? Is this a reflection of truth or just my fear talking? Over time, you become someone different. Not because you changed who you are, but because you stopped reacting like you used to. The smartest people don't just think better. They pause better. They create that crucial gap, and in that space, they choose growth over ego, clarity over chaos, wisdom over reaction. It's not about being perfect. It's about being awake. And once you start building this habit, life feels different. Not easier, but clearer, lighter, more within your control. You'll still feel anger, fear, insecurity, and doubt, but you'll no longer be ruled by them. You'll see them for what they are, signals, not commands. That's real power. That's what makes you smarter than 90% of people. And the best part? Anyone can start. No degree, no guru, no fancy tools needed. Just the willingness to pause, reflect, and respond with intention. So the next time you feel that urge to react, remember this. You are one pause away from being the person you wish you were. Let's talk more about how to build that habit. Everyone has a plan, until life punches them in the face. That's when the real test begins. Not in calm moments, but in chaos. Not when things go right, but when everything breaks down. That's when your mind shows you what it really believes. See, it's easy to talk about patience, wisdom, and control when nothing's testing you. But what about when someone betrays your trust? What about when life hands you rejection, loss, or failure? What about when someone talks down to you, when everything in your chest wants to fight back? Those are the moments when emotional habits speak louder than any quote. They reveal what's buried under all the "I know better." And most people, they fall right into the trap. They let pain become anger. They let fear turn into defensiveness. They let ego run wild. Because in crisis, the untrained mind scrambles to protect itself. We've all been there. Triggered by someone's tone, hijacked by a single sentence, stuck in our heads for hours, replaying a 10-second interaction. And in that emotional fog, we forget one thing. You're not your first thought. Your first thought is your programming. Your second thought is your power. That second thought, the one that comes after the fire, that's the one that matters. Because it's the first moment you can choose. But here's the thing. The deeper the wound, the louder the reaction. And some wounds go way back. That's why people explode over small things. Not because of the thing itself, but because of what it represents. Rejection doesn't just hurt. It reawakens the part of you that feels unworthy. Criticism doesn't just sting, it whispers, "You're not enough." Being ignored doesn't just annoy, it screams, "You don't matter." And when those old wounds get triggered, you don't just react to the moment, you react to your whole history. That's why crisis is more than just inconvenience. It's a spotlight. It shows you where your emotional armor is cracked. It forces you to face what you've been avoiding. But most people don't see it like that. They just react. They raise their voice. They shut down. They ghost. They post passive-aggressive quotes on social media. They turn pain into performance because feeling it is too hard. But here's the truth no one likes to say. Pain is the doorway to wisdom. If you run from it, you stay stuck. If you face it, you grow. And Stoicism isn't about avoiding pain. It's about meeting it with clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That's not denial. That's ownership. And ownership changes everything. Let's break this down. Let's say you lose your job. Most people panic. Their minds spiral. They go straight into fear. What will people think? Am I falling behind? Am I a failure? The emotional brain takes the mic, and the story it tells is brutal. But what if you pause? What if instead of reacting, you observe? What if you ask, what part of me feels attacked right now? What belief is this shaking? What can I control in this exact moment? That's how the storm loses its power. You're not bypassing the pain. You're disarming it. Because crisis isn't just about what's happening. It's about what meaning you attach to it. You see someone pull away, and you tell yourself, "I must not matter." You face rejection, and the old voice says, "You're never good enough." But here's the thing. Those voices aren't truth. They're echoes. Leftover scripts from childhood, trauma, past failures. And the pause we talked about in part 1? This is when it becomes a weapon. A way to break the echo chamber. You start to hear the voice that says, "Wait, is this pain real, or is it recycled?" That's what makes you smarter than 90% of people. Not more logic, but more emotional awareness. Because if you don't learn to sit with discomfort, you'll always seek distraction. You'll lash out. You'll numb out. You'll find someone to blame. But the problem will follow you. Because it was never out there to begin with. It was always inside. And here's where Stoicism isn't just a mindset. It's a muscle. You practice, not when things are easy, but when things fall apart. You practice not reacting to every insult. You practice not attaching to every emotion. You practice not believing every fearful thought your brain throws at you in survival mode. And you learn that discomfort is not the enemy. In fact, discomfort is a mirror. It shows you where you still have work to do. It shows you what still owns you emotionally. It shows you where your growth is hiding. So next time crisis hits, Don't just survive it. Study it. Ask, what's this teaching me about myself? What part of me is still reactive? Who am I when things go wrong? Because who you are in those moments, that's your real character. Not the image, not the highlight reel, but the version of you that shows up when nothing's going your way. And that version is where your power lives. Because once you can stay calm in the fire, nothing outside you can control you again. That's when people look at you and wonder, why aren't they freaking out? How are they so composed? It's not because you don't feel it, it's because you've trained for it. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being present, even in the mess. And presence changes everything. So next time crisis strikes, pause, breathe, don't flinch, feel it all, and respond from the strongest part of you. Because that's how resilience is built. There's a moment after the pain, after the reaction, after the emotional storm clears, when something shifts. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. But it's real. You look at the same problem, and it just doesn't hold the same power. That moment? That's the beginning of transformation, not the kind you post about, not the kind people notice right away, but the kind that rewires you, deep, silent, permanent. And here's what most people never realize. Transformation isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the noise, before the fear, before the ego, before the world taught you to armor up just to survive. Because we're all born with clarity, with presence, with peace. But over time, that gets buried under defense mechanisms, habits we develop to protect ourselves. So when people talk about changing, what they're really doing is unlearning. Unlearning the stories, unlearning the triggers, unlearning the voice in your head that says you're not enough. That's the real work. And most of it happens in silence, in moments when no one's watching. You stop reacting to things that used to control you. You stop chasing validation from people who don't even know themselves. You stop arguing just to be right. You start choosing your peace over your pride. And suddenly, life feels lighter. Not because the world changed, but because you did. See, there's a freedom that comes when you no longer need everything to go your way. When your worth isn't tied to outcomes. When you no longer chase emotions to feel alive. You stop needing the noise because silence finally feels safe. That's transformation. It's the quiet confidence that says, I know who I am, even if you don't. I know what I stand for, even if no one claps. I know how to breathe through discomfort without running from it. And when you get there, you realize most of the world is asleep. Not physically, mentally, sleepwalking through life, reacting to everything, trying to control what's outside because they haven't mastered what's inside. But you're learning to wake up, to stop treating every discomfort as an emergency, to stop mistaking emotion for truth, to stop trying to win arguments that don't matter. You start asking, is this worth my peace? Is this reaction helping me grow? Am I living by design or by default? That's what makes you different. Not that you never feel pain, but that you no longer build your identity around it. Because there's a moment in every person's growth where they realize the real flex isn't having the last word. It's having the inner world no one can shake. That's when people start to notice. They won't always say it, but they feel it. They feel it in how you show up, in how you don't rush to speak, in how you listen without judgment, in how your presence calms the room. And no, it's not perfection. You'll still get triggered. You'll still stumble, but you recover faster. You return to center quicker, because now you have tools. Tools like the pause, tools like self-inquiry, tools like stillness before speech. And once you taste that peace, chaos no longer excites you. You don't need the drama. You don't crave the validation. You don't chase highs to feel something, because you've found something deeper, equanimity. That word gets thrown around, but few understand it. Equanimity is the stillness underneath the storm, the place inside you that doesn't rise and fall with circumstances. It's what Stoics trained for. It's what all ancient wisdom points to, and it's what most people never reach because they think transformation means adding more. But it's actually about needing less. Less reactivity, less control, less proving, less explaining yourself to people who were never listening. And here's the wild part. Once you stop chasing, everything that's meant for you flows toward you. Not because of manifestation, not because of magic, but because your energy changes. You're no longer tense, no longer desperate, no longer operating from lack. You're grounded, present, unattached to outcomes. And that kind of energy, it draws in clarity. It repels chaos. It invites respect. That's when people ask, what changed? And you won't have a flashy answer, because the real shift didn't happen on the outside. It happened in the quiet space between reaction and response, in the pause, in the breath, in the decision to no longer abandon yourself for temporary comfort. That's the transformation no one teaches in school, the kind that makes you resilient, not just smart, peaceful, not just successful, whole, not just impressive. And once you reach that place, you don't go back. There's a kind of intelligence the world doesn't talk about enough. Not the IQ kind, not the fast-talking, quick-answer kind, not the kind that dominates debates or builds billion-dollar companies. It's the kind that lives in stillness, the kind that doesn't rush to speak, that doesn't need to prove, that sees everything but doesn't react to everything. Stillness isn't weakness, it's control, not over others, over yourself. And that's rare, because we're taught from an early age to fill silence, to always have an opinion, to never pause. But real growth, real clarity, comes in the pause. It's in those quiet moments where you realize most of life's chaos isn't from the events, it's from our reactions. Think about it. How many arguments could have been avoided with just 5 seconds of stillness? How many regrets came from speaking too fast, acting too soon, moving from impulse instead of awareness? Stillness gives you back your power, because when you stop reacting, you start choosing. And choice is where freedom lives. Most people don't realize they're slaves to their emotions. They think they're in control, but really, they're on autopilot. Triggered by everything, living in survival mode, saying things they don't mean, doing things they regret. But stillness breaks that cycle. It's the pause that rewires the pattern. It's what allows you to hear your own thoughts before you become them. And that's where wisdom begins. You stop assuming. You start observing. You stop chasing. You start aligning. You stop needing noise. You start listening inward. That's the kind of intelligence you can't fake. It's earned. Through self-awareness, through discomfort, through discipline. Stillness is not passive. It's the most active choice you can make in a reactive world. Because to be still, you have to resist your most primal urges, the urge to defend, the urge to control, the urge to be seen, the urge to win, and instead, just be. Observe without needing to label. Feel without needing to explain, exist without needing approval. That kind of presence, it's magnetic. People feel it, because it's rare. Most people speak to be heard. But when you master stillness, your silence says more than words ever could. You walk into a room, and people sense the difference. You don't command attention, you radiate presence. That's real intelligence, because it's not about being the loudest, it's about being the clearest. And clarity doesn't need volume. It needs space. Stillness is space. The space between thought and action. The space between impulse and wisdom. The space where the old version of you would have reacted. But the new version of you just breathes. And from that breath, a new choice emerges. That's where transformation becomes identity. Because the goal isn't to never feel emotion. The goal is to not let emotion drive the car. Let it sit in the passenger seat. Let it speak, but don't hand it the wheel. That's what stillness gives you, perspective. And in a world that runs on noise, stillness becomes rebellion. You're no longer pulled by trends. You're no longer swayed by pressure. You're no longer addicted to speed. You choose intention over urgency. You choose response over reaction. You choose your peace over their chaos. And when you live from that place, you begin to trust yourself again. Not because you always have the right answer, but because you no longer fear the unknown. Stillness teaches you that not everything needs to be fixed. Not everything is your responsibility. Not every emotion needs a reaction. Sometimes, the most intelligent thing you can do is wait. Wait until the emotion settles. Wait until the noise clears. Wait until your response comes from clarity, not fear. Because when you speak from stillness, your words land differently. They cut through the noise. They carry weight. And when you live from stillness, your presence shifts rooms. Not because you're perfect, but because you're anchored. You don't float in and out of moods like the wind. You don't break at the first sign of conflict. You don't run from discomfort. You breathe through it. That's what makes stillness the highest form of intelligence, because anyone can talk, anyone can react, anyone can be loud, but to be still, that takes mastery, and you're getting there every time you pause, every time you breathe instead of break, every time you choose peace over pride. You're building the kind of power that doesn't need to shout, because it already knows. And the ones who know don't need to be known. They just live from stillness, from strength, from something deeper than noise could ever reach. That's the intelligence that changes lives. And it starts with one breath, one pause, one moment of stillness. Here's the bottom line. Being smart isn't just about knowledge, it's about mastering yourself. That simple habit of pausing before reacting gives you an edge most people don't have. It's what makes you smarter than 90% of others. Perfection isn't the goal. The goal is awareness, catching yourself in the moment and choosing a better response. Over time, that tiny pause builds a powerful habit that shapes your life for the better. This isn't theory. It's a real, everyday tool you can use to think clearer, act wiser, and stay calm no matter what comes your way. If this resonated with you, drop a comment below and share your story. And if you want more content that challenges your thinking and helps you grow, hit subscribe and join our community. You're not alone. Let's grow smarter together.